Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast, where we are unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Crystal Roberts, and together with Trisha Ryan, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we're exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now.
Hi, Trisha. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. How about yourself, Crystal?
I'm doing great. Yeah, even though the sun has gone away a little bit.
I don't even want to talk about it.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
I will believe it when I see it.
Yeah, we had our little false summer or whatever they call it. Yeah, now it'll probably rain until 4th of July. And then it'll be nice.
And it will have already started the summer season. We're only a week away, you know.
Yeah, but the flowers are out and it's gorgeous here in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
It is. Okay, I'll give it that.
I really think today's episode is going to be a game changer. I'm really excited about it.
I am too.
Yeah, a game changer for our listeners. So I hope they, lean in and really even grab a notepad and a pen, because there's some really good stuff that's going to be in this episode. Our listeners know that on this podcast, we talk a lot about what it takes to make positive, lasting change. But today's guest is going to disrupt some of our assumptions.
Yay.
Get ready. You're going to feel a little uncomfortable. And it's going to disrupt how we think about change, especially in regards to how we view resistance. All in an effort to help us to deepen our awareness and our tools for true transformation. Listeners, keep your leadership hat close by, because as you, of course, remember, we're all leaders. But while this will be a really important sort of new day for us personally, this will also help us as leaders to help our teams drive change.
That's right.
And our guest today brings a deep and compassionate understanding of personal power, resistance, and choice. Through all of her work, including a model I was fortunate to learn about recently, this was her adaptation of the Hank Karp's awareness model, has empowered countless leaders to navigate complexity with greater clarity and intention. In this conversation, we'll explore how presence, perception, and the choices we make around what becomes figure, and we'll talk about what that is, figure in our awareness can shape not only our leadership, but our impact on the world. So welcome, Dr. Dorothy Siminovitch. Thank you for being here on the Lifting Leaders podcast show.
It's an honor, privilege. I'm delighted. Thank you.
So I want to share just a little bit more about you before we dive in, and this comes from her bio. So Dr. Dorothy Siminovitch is a master certified coach and a pioneer visionary in the field of Gestalt-based coaching. She's the founder and president of Gestalt Coaching Works and co-founder of multiple major coach training programs. The Gestalt Coaching Program in Istanbul has become global and is accredited by the International Coaching Federation. Dorothy brings decades of global experience as a coach, consultant, speaker, and educator. She recently joined the coach teaching faculty at Hudson Coaching Institute. Shout out to our Hudson buddies. Further expanding her influence in coach training. While a Ph.D. in organizational behavior from Case Western Reserve University, Dorothy has spent her career applying Gestalt theory to transformative leadership development. She's trained coaches around the world since 1996, blending deep insight with practical tools to help leaders enhance their presence, navigate challenges, and elevate performance. She's the author of a Gestalt coaching primer, The Path Toward Awareness Intelligence, and co-creator of the Awareness 2020 Leadership Assessment Tool. Dorothy is known for her warmth, and I have so experienced this myself, her warmth, wisdom, focus on awareness, and signature presence. And in 2023, she was honored with the ICF Toronto Chapter's Lifetime Achievement Award in Coaching.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
I would also just like to add from a personal note, because I was able to spend a couple days with her learning, I just loved being able to see some of the coaching that was happening in the room that she did with some of the people that were participating, I think about how impactful sometimes we think it's got to take a long time. And I think that was a thing, when we coach with people for them to have an aha or awareness moment. And Dorothy would get there in minutes. And it would go from the head to the heart, just like so fast. And I was like, I wish I was videotaping this because it was so impactful.
I love the feeling when that happens. And I do know that most of the time it doesn't happen just like that. So clearly you have the gift. Right? Yeah. It's wonderful.
And the ability to sort of tune in and see and really be present. That was so clear. Awesome. And thank you, Dorothy, for that opportunity to learn with you. For me as a coach, I really saw the power of the presence when we were there with you. Yeah. So thank you for being on the podcast. And we're really looking forward to sharing some of this learning with our listeners.
Yes. And, I will say that I am so sorry that I wasn't able to go to your pre-conference sessions. I was actually working for a living. No, I'm kidding. I actually was working. I couldn't get away. But I have heard a lot of wonderful things about it ever since. So if it ever happens again, I'm there.
Thank you.
So let's start with our first question, which is, tell us your story. And maybe weave in that the little teaser you gave us before, which is, why did you choose to become a coach?
Well, first of all, I just have to say that I've just enjoyed this moment with both of you. It's just, when two people share work together, they have a relationship, and your relationship is clearly just wonderful for you, but wonderful for anyone near you.
Thank you.
We could just spend time talking about work and working relationships. I mean, that was just wonderful. And it's interesting listening to you talk about my bio, because part of me is going, look at that. Look what this person did. And I'm going, oh, no, I am that person. So I do feel this kind of poignant walk down history reflections as you speak about it. And some of those memories are just, if I knew then what I see now, I would say, you're going to be surprised what your future holds. So as I listen to you, I say, isn't that interesting? You're going to be surprised. And I think maybe where I can just start with is, I'm originally from Montreal, and I went to Cleveland, Ohio, because my husband was taking a residency, and I did a lot of training. I was already something called a neuropsychometrician. That was my very first position out of college, and that was my very first job, and I thought it was very important. And I actually thought, oh, this was the most important job, really adding something for physicians to use. And then I went to the States, and I really understood, wait a second here, I don't know anything about this world, but I need a lot more knowledge. So I went back to get a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I said, that's not enough. I need something more. And I had experienced two different kind of people, a woman and a man, who had this set of skills that I thought, oh, whatever those skills are about managing groups, when they spoke, it was like the old E. F. Hutton commercial. Whenever they spoke, people listened. Okay, I like that, right? It was a presence, influence moment. Whatever they said, I noticed I listened, but I noticed everyone listened. So I thought, well, where did they get that training from? And it was from a place called Case Western Reserve Organizational Behavior. I thought, okay, I'm going to do that, because obviously in the world of that world, in the time that I went to school, it seemed that women needed more official authority, and getting a PhD was going to be my route to that.
Yeah.
Now, those years were not easy, because where do you decide in the world? There's so many places to study. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? What's important? So I had all of those meaning questions, which you can get very philosophical about that. And I think anyone listens, when you struggle with what is most meaningful in my world, that could be a long struggle. So that was one place of remembering what's the lost, and I'd like to be found. I'd like to really do something that makes a difference. So one of the things that I did do was I studied leadership that was called something called generative. I got very interested in those people that use their social good for the greater social good. And I came up with very interesting kind of criteria and something that today we use the word generative leadership. So I did a dissertation on that. Looking
Mm.
back, it's even hard to believe that I did that because it's still a modern,
Yeah.
relevant concept.
Yes.
Absolutely. And the leaders that I found were amazing, and the teams that they work with were also remarkable. But within a few years of my getting my PhD, it was a very interesting thing because I was working as a consultant. I no longer worked as a therapist those days. I said, I'm not interested in what's wrong with you. I want to know what can we do to make the world better. That was
Mm.
my focus. Organizational behavior was not personal enough. It was just actually like a flow chart and activities. And I wanted something more contactful. Not that I understood what I wanted, but events actually, if you're doing what you need to be doing, sometimes events have information. And while I was giving training at an institute called the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, very famous, particularly in its early days. It was a very famous
Mhm.
personal and professional growth institute. I had a student of ours who got into trouble at Case Western Reserve, authority figures. She was a very creative person, female, was more traditionally male. And she wanted to leave. I said, "What do you mean you want to leave?" She said, "I want to leave." I said, "Okay, leave where?" She said, I'm done. I'm going to leave without anything." I said, "You mean you spent 3 years and you're going to walk away with nothing?"
Mm.
"Yes." "No, no, no, no. Let's go out for lunch. I'm going to help you." She said, "Really? Because you've never offered lunch or help before." I said, "I know, but I don't think anyone's going to be able to help you, and I think I can."
Mm.
Because I think, again, that feeling of being an immigrant and not having opportunity and that kind of loneliness is a terrible thing. And I said, "I could help you." So we went out for lunch, and the rest is history.
Mm.
She walked away with a master's of organizational behavior. We constructed a plan for her to get it, which was wonderful. And then when she was on the outside, she said, "Dorothy, I'm going to do my PhD, a correspondence course at Union." I said, "Okay, wonderful." She said, "I'd like you to be on it." I said, "Wonderful. But I am not going to be your therapist. I'm going to be something else." This was 1995, called coaching.
Mm.
"I'm going to be your coach," which means, and we didn't even know what it was, right? So I'm going to assist you in achieving what you want by working with you as a partner. Again, I didn't even understand the definitions, and I remember using the language, and she succeeded.
Mm.
And from that
Wow.
moment on, I tell you, Crystal and Trisha, is it Trisha or Trish?
It's Trisha.
A wonderful name.
Thank you.
Crystal and Trisha, you're unique. And from that moment on, I said, okay, let's offer a workshop called Gestalt Coaching. Those two words had never been paired before.
Right. Wow.
And people would say to me, and this is a funny story. They said, "Oh, you know what, Dorothy?" It was a long time ago, but people would say, "That Dorothy, she always has an idea. it's
Oh.
she's like the Howard Johnsons. It's the flavor of the month." Remember those days, those
Yeah.
horrible colors? Well, I said, "No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a place of learning. It's like an umbrella. It's not going to be a stigmatizing thing like therapy, and it's not going to be like org speak, like organizational flowcharts.
Mhm.
It's going to be conversations. It's going to be a place where people with authority and also a sense of not being quite sure of where they are in the world career wise, promotion wise, team wise will have a safe place to speak." And sure enough, the very first workshop that we did, we called it Gestalt Coaching. I had invited a senior faculty to work with me who I thought was a brilliant teacher. I said, the very first workshop that we did, we had 35 people turn up.
Wow.
And some of these people came from one person came from England. They said, "You're doing something we
Wow.
have to do," because also, and it was a famous place.
Yeah.
And it was lightning in the bottle, what they call a zeitgeist moment.
Mm.
So we had these wonderful people that came. We did a 4-day workshop, and still I do that workshop to this day, called Gestalt Coaching, Enhancing Your Competency. And it's the methodology of Gestalt, which is about awareness based.
Mhm.
How do you deal with the complexity of inside yourself, between you and others, or group situations, or the greater environment? That's a lot to pay attention to.
It
How
is.
do we decide what to focus on?
Yeah.
When you look at those few words that I've just said, and that's the formula. So from that moment on, we started getting these workshops, and people would come to these workshops. And probably we did those workshops for about 3 years, but this time it's like 96 to 99. And I said, we have something, but we're not doing it smart enough. I think we need to do something called a coaching program. Think about this. It was very organic development, and it was almost like, it's hard to believe when I look back at that. And many, many innovators and entrepreneurs, when you say, how did you do it? They say, well, it wasn't so hard because there's nothing else to compete with it. You think
Yeah.
it wasn't so hard. It was kind of obvious. It kind of was begging to be done. The snow was still fresh. The tracks were still mine. So that's what happened. I started saying, well, what's out there? And I then in the early days, it was kind of funny. I think I'll go to California for the weekend. They're doing something there called coaching with professional coaches and mentors group. That was an early formulation. I went there. Those were the early CTI people. Then I met the new ventures people. Then did work with the new field people. So I felt like a little butterfly flying around, picking up an exercise here and there, and that's what happened. We then constructed a training program called Gestalt Coaching, which was, I thought it was on target for being the top, 5 training programs in the world. But then they say, careful when you plan because things happen. I wouldn't have known it at the time. And at the time, I was already beginning to do these workshops in Israel, in Turkey. I had been invited to come, and actually unexpected. I had not expected those things to happen. But we started a program, the International Gestalt Coaching Program, in 2003, and it was a wonderful, wonderful program. Again, we had people from Singapore. We had like 12 people come from Turkey because of my work there. We had people come from England. It was an amazing time.
Yeah.
But the fascinating thing is you don't expect people problems. And real growth sometimes is lack of people, or the people that you have say, it's mine. And you're never prepared for that. So collaboration and really teamwork are desirable goals. Sharing leadership are desirable goals, but so often ego gets in the way. And so when that happened, a lot of events happened. And when I look back, particularly as a woman, it was just so difficult because my partner for the program in Cleveland kind of we had a tremendous falling out. He had a falling out at the Gestalt Institute and then wanted to really kind of control the program. And I said, I don't think that's going to work. So I said to my Turkey people, my colleagues, but I think I could bring this program to Istanbul. What do you think? And that is what happened. It's hard to believe because and I guess relationship also could drive the path of where we go forward. And at the same time, again, for the listeners, as you're listening, to every listener, I say, look where you are on the path of your development. And look who, the old Rogers, Mr. Rogers saying, look for the helpers, they're there.
Yeah.
Look for the helpers on the way of your path of development. Because you don't know who's going to water your garden. Because along those years of development, so the International Gestalt Program was 2003 to 2005, 2008, 2003 to 2005. But along those years, this is what's so fascinating, I did a little workshop for the Hudson Institute of Coaching. They had seen me speak somewhere and they said, well, we could invite Dorothy to do a leadership retreat for us.
So you didn't know about Hudson before that?
I had no idea about Hudson, but I had no idea of their program, but I had along that path of development gone to hear Frederick Hudson speak when he had given a lecture in Cleveland. Someone said, if you can hear him, you should go.
Yes.
I only heard him once, but I knew immediately this is a man who knows. And his sense of presence was so extraordinary, and his command of the knowledge was so obvious, and his personal gravitas. I mean, we had a woman, it's not funny, but of course, stories are funny. this is again 30 years ago, but we had a woman, we were in a building behind the Institute called the Coach House. You couldn't make this up, actually. It was called the Coach House. It was an older building with land, and in the old, I guess in the 20s, Cleveland had magnificent places. So with a Coach House. So we were all sitting there, and then there was this woman. She was sitting and crying. Clearly she wanted attention, but she had some reason to have attention. So she was sitting and crying, and then all of us, myself included, were thinking, when is Frederick going to do something? We were just waiting. She's crying, and finally, after about 10, 15 minutes of this, he looks at her, and he was a very intent, very purposeful, took the space, really, really had a way with him, totally wonderful delivery. And he looks at this woman, and he says, how old are you? All of us were going, what a question. He said, 35. He says, that's about right. Again, what's he talking about? And then he comes out with this. He says, well, by about 35, you learn that the world is just actually not fair. You either don't get the promotion that you wanted, or you got the promotion but you lost it, or the person you love doesn't love you, or they love you but they get ill, or the person you didn't expect to get ill gets ill or moves away, or something terrible happened, or you lose your favorite. And he went through all these permutations of life that nobody wants that can happen. He says, so no one escapes something. And if you escape something, you know that it's still waiting for you. He says, so your job is to find the strength to get through the something that hit you. And that's called life.
Yes.
And it's called development. And it's called resilience. And this is what I always said to Pam McLeod at Hudson. Okay, I got my whole lecture. I got my whole story of adult development in that 5 minutes with him. I always tell that story because it was brilliant and clear. And here's the most important piece. True. What really is brilliant and enduring is going to always be true now, 50 years from now, 500 years from now.
Yeah.
Right. And so I looked at him and I thought, well, this is something. And then I had heard they'd started a coaching program. And then we met at conferences. And so when Pam had invited me with Bill Lindbergh from ACTO at the time, Association of Coach Training Organizations, I said, sure. And a month before, we did the leadership treat, which was also a thing in Santa Fe at a monastery. Thank you.
Oh,
Because, the Hudson people are very creative, right?
Yeah.
The reason I referenced that workshop, it was a leadership workshop, is when they were still kind of moving through the tragedy of having lost Frederick, because, to lose a person like that is very, very, very hard.
Yes.
Yes. And so they were trying to cultivate their leadership and move through the grief. And we had maintained connections. And what happened was in 2009, when my partnership in Cleveland just was not going to be able to go forward, I said, okay, what we can do is I can bring this workshop to Istanbul. And I didn't realize how radical a decision that was, except two things happened that I thought was fascinating. Because I had gone there on a few trips, and we'd done team development, and we'd done group coaching workshops. The thing that I found fascinating was Turkish Airline. The very month I started working on the coaching program in Turkey, in Istanbul, they decided to start a direct flight from Toronto to Cleveland.
How nice.
Well, I thought that was like a divine sign.
Yeah.
That we're going to help you. You take a night flight, work hard all day, sleep on the flight, and when you wake up in the afternoon, you'll be there. And that was 60 flights ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Been to Istanbul 60 times
Wow.
since 2009. And we are in our 17th year of the coaching program there. And then I think what ended up happening was the Hudson people, and again, I love their work, that kind of crossover was so exciting that and this is what Hudson is, it's a very serious, thoughtful, committed teaching program, teaching school. They had then invited me, and so to work with them, and that's where we are. And even the workshop, Tricia, it's interesting because when Crystal, I see it so, it's hard to believe that was last month, but
Yeah.
that workshop, it was fun, it was rich, it was almost unbelievable because it felt very, very rich, very, very playful, but very different from Hudson in that it was, let's see, is this what you want to do? Let's see if we can tweak it, change it, move it. It was highly interactive, and yet Hudson invited that.
Yeah.
So I give them, the credit for trusting the people they invite. And I think also there's so many things, and this is maybe the one thing I'm going to say about this as we pivot, because the story, ICF always likes to ask people, tell your story of how you got to coaching.
Yeah.
And I think it's because coaching is this place of surprise. We know it's about change. We know it's about learning. We know it's about dreams and possibility, but we never know how you're really going to make it happen because it's not, the thing that I will say is it's not really routine. It's not like you're going to meet together in half an hour and you're going to walk out with like, knowing how to change a tire
Right.
or fix a tooth
Yeah.
or land a plane. These are all wonderful things. But coaching is, you don't know if it's an internal change your aspirations or, your dream of the future is your family of origins dream, and maybe you could dream your own dream. You don't know what it's going to be. So I actually think, even though as I tell the story, and I can't even make any age jokes or I'm like, I can't believe it. It's like it still feels so relevant. It still
Yeah.
feels so new. It's still coaching. Yes, I've been on this path seriously for a long time, and it still feels like, ooh, what do I have to learn to make that happen?
Yeah.
It still feels so compelling. And I think that's why coaching, for those people who've been bitten by the coaching bug,
Mm-hmm.
feels so relevant because, the world is, the pace of change is so extreme that we know that there are more places now than ever that need support or help or a trusted other to be with you, or to be with another, to help stave off the pain of, I just am not sure, or I can't tell anyone I don't know, or I'm not sure how I should even go about this, or I'm supposed to know everything and I still feel lost. That's a real loneliness.
Yeah.
So actually, the question when you sent me that, what's your story, and I go, oh, it's still so relevant. I still feel like I'm arriving.
I
That's
love that.
beautiful. It's to me when you're talking about coaching, it's the word that keeps coming up is evergreen because it really is it renews itself all the time. It's always every day is a new thing. Every day is an unknown. Every day is excitement because it's not my agenda that really drives it. It's whatever presents itself, which is
Exactly.
amazing, right? Every time. So
Right, because people are fascinating.
Yes.
yeah.
It's really.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
adapted Hank Karp's awareness model in powerful ways that help leaders access their personal power. Can you
Yes.
walk us through how awareness becomes a gateway to that power, especially in moments of uncertainty or transition?
Yeah. I love that you love the model, or it speaks to you. I think, Crystal, it's so interesting when I introduce the model, which many people have seen me talk about, but I really feel like, was it this group that really heard it, that all of a sudden, first of all, I love for Hank Karp to get the recognition that he deserves because it seems simple, but it's quite profound, which is what really profound ideas are. They can say they have a lot of complexity built into them. So it's a 2 by 2, and I think, the if you for the listener in particular, as you're looking at it as a 2 by 2. So in the upper, as you're looking at this, in the upper left-hand corner, the dimension is what I want. So this I want and I get. And on the bottom right-hand corner, the dimension is and I don't want and I don't get.
Right.
So the two poles that Trisha just mentioned of personal power are I want this. I do whatever I have to do to get this. I feel satisfied. That to me is a condition of satisfaction. I wanted to get this job and I worked to get this job. I feel satisfied and I tell everybody I got this. On the other side is on the bottom right is I didn't want this. And I tell people, I don't think that's the position for me. It's not for me, either my family or the conditions, or I don't want this. And I think I didn't get what I didn't want. I feel relieved. I feel grateful. And sometimes you think that, oh, come on, that's not a big thing. Just be invited to someone's house for dinner where they serve food you don't want to eat.
Yeah.
Try to manage
Right.
that.
Yeah.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, today's world especially. So to not get what you don't want is a personal form of power, and they're connected. And very often, in order to make sure I get what I want, I have to also be actively committed to say what I don't want. Gee, I want to have a meeting tomorrow at 10. It means I'm meeting with you for dinner or for whatever. I have to get home by 8:30, so I do my evening routine and I'm in bed by at least 11 because I know it's going to take me an hour to get dressed and walk the dog and do this. And I don't want to be late for that 8 o'clock morning meeting. So there are things we need to do. If we don't say no to something, we can't say yes to something.
Yeah.
So that's clear, personal power.
Yes.
And what gets in the way of personal power? Now that becomes very interesting because on the bottom left-hand side, so this is the corner underneath what I wanted, is the corner of I didn't get what I wanted. And that is the section that says, I didn't get what I wanted, and I wanted this. And therefore, I feel a sense of loss. I wanted to be able to get that promotion, or I wanted to be invited to the think tank conversation about this, or I wanted to, I heard there was a meeting of these people, just preliminary. I wanted to be in that meeting. I didn't get asked. Whatever it is the want that you don't get, you feel a level of, sadness. And if it happens often enough, the feeling also is resignation. Geez, I didn't get it. And something else happens, and I go, why bother? I didn't get that, and I didn't get that. I just give up wanting. But the body knows, and you feel like a little depressed, a little resigned, like a little mousy instead of like an eagle, right?
Yeah.
Then the top right, above the resistance, is a different section, and that section is, I got what I didn't want. And that section, when you get what you didn't want, even as I said that I increased my voice, a little bristly. I said I didn't want this, and you asked me to do this anyway, or nobody else is doing this, so I got this. And that section, people, when they get what they didn't want, it's kind of hard not to feel it, but they feel resentful. I didn't want this, or I told you I'm allergic to bread, and you keep offering this, or I told I really wanted to be part of that, and you asked him. Yeah. So people feel resentful, they feel angry, and actually it's almost like poisonous. That kind of degree of feeling like a victim is angry, and those two poles, to not get what you don't want, and sometimes to get to not get what you wanted, or to get what you don't want, in many ways are almost like typical patterns of resistance that we haven't worked out well. Because you say to yourself, how is it that you allowed yourself, again, not to get what you didn't want? The person who says, I'm in a leadership position, and yes, you say, well, what's the issue? People cut me off. I don't understand. What do you mean? Well, when I'm talking, I don't feel people respect my leadership because people interrupt me. Okay. Do you ever say, excuse me, maybe I'm talking right now. Oh, I don't think I can.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I don't. Small little behaviors, these microaggressions. Or I got what I didn't want. Did you let them know? Did you take little steps? No, I really couldn't. So you didn't tell them you shouldn't, and it builds up to like a steam engine. They blow their top, and so those two poles are those. And what's interesting is the management of conflict in today's world is really the management of little steps of resistance to be able to speak up for yourself about your want, and to be able to set the boundary about your don't want.
As you're talking about that, I had this visualization of somebody having a knee-jerk reaction, and I had to stop and think, that's not really necessarily true. Because if someone is in the habit of getting things that they don't want and they don't say anything about it, over time it starts to build and you keep adding more of those on and you're just building. Your knee-jerk reaction is actually really late because it's coming out maybe in one incident, but you're actually maybe knee-jerk reacting to all of the ones that built up to that moment. And I don't know why that came to my head, but I was thinking, gosh, we do take on, there are people who will take on a lot, and then when you do kind of push back a little bit and say, well, why didn't you say something about that? Well, I couldn't. And I want to know why. What's the couldn't, right?
Well, so it's very interesting. I would say this because this is where there's kind of probably several different reasons for why you couldn't. But the major reason, I'd say two reasons that we think that are really kind of chronic, and that is people stop paying attention. And they literally imagine you stop paying attention and your eyes aren't listening to it. Your ears aren't listening to you. Sometimes a loved one is telling you something. You say, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to you. That's what not paying attention. Even if you love someone, you're just not paying attention, right? Your child, I didn't get it. You weren't paying attention. So in a way, we know how to numb ourselves out. So we either numb ourselves out, I wasn't paying attention, I didn't realize, or we have what's called a pattern of shoulds. Internalized messages about how we should respond without taking into account how we really feel about it. What ends up happening if I'm told, for example, really, you shouldn't make waves. You shouldn't be such a frisky person. Oh, you have an opinion? You have to share your opinion? Well, how do you do that? And if you do that too early, I think you're standing out. Don't do that. So you don't. Okay, so event one, you say to yourself, that's not something I want. You say nothing. Event two, oh, geez, nobody talked. Maybe I shouldn't really. Event three, and each time that happens, you're sitting there, and what happens is, and I think, Tricia, this is exactly it, your little somatic kind of message gets intensified. And that what happens by time X, which is 8 or 9, instead of saying, hey, I just want to tell you something in a soft voice, you go, hey,
Right.
and your voice is stronger, your somatic is stronger, and people go, okay, and they're no longer listening, they're protecting.
Yes.
And by then it's more hopeless about really moving forward rather than hopeful that it's just a small thing.
That makes so much sense. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I see that sometimes, and I sit back and I wonder, what led up to this moment, because you have to wonder. I see certain leaders who will sit back a lot and not take that small brave move to, speak up when something is something they don't want. They'll just keep taking it. And they don't necessarily do a great job at it because their heart isn't in it. They're doing it. It's like Lindsay Godwin's ditty, they're taking on another ditty. But it's interesting.
Yeah. And it is really hard to see the clients that have sort of given up, the employees who have lost all of their personal power. They're sort of sitting in one of those boxes of not getting what they want. They've lost that connection. Yeah.
So that becomes the interesting question.
Yeah.
Have they lost it, or is there some ways, this is where coaching and organizations can be so useful, because very often, especially when you get stakeholders involved, like the head of HR, or you get someone who really is in a leadership position that says, I see the value of this person. And then you could explore how much permission, if this person really was to move forward, what's the permission that's possible? What is the negotiation of changing that? Because you don't want to coach somebody around something if the organization is not going to really invite them to have a direct conversation, or something can change. And so very often, if you coach a person around something that they felt hopeless about or angry about, and the organization doesn't respond to them, then the person will leave. They'll say, now that I feel better, I'm going to be on a job search. So that's actually, which is maybe what has to happen. But if at all possible, it's just ethically, does this organization who has hired you as coach, as external coach, really be committed to supporting this person's growth in areas that may be very growthful to them? It just was to someone who wrote a very exciting book. It was called, The Pirates in the Navy. It was actually thrilling about the management of resistance in organizations. And to be innovators is to manage sometimes all the unspoken rules for why you wouldn't. And I think you need to have a sense of hope and possibility to be able to say to a person, "Are you angry about that?" Or
Yeah.
"That's maybe too hot. I don't know. You were quiet. Is this okay? Can I ask you about that?" And so I have learned as a woman to soften my voice, even me, yeah, slower. So even asking about that, I didn't used to be funny, and I don't think I'm even funny. But when I ask about this, I feel very funny because I feel very gentle, much more gentle than I would normally be, because you don't know when you're dealing with someone's resistance if it's attached to so many hidden things that even to touch it feels like an emotional landmine.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be, so if someone like us, the coaches, are not careful about it, well, that's not fair, because we need to be careful to keep asking, is this loaded for you? Can I ask about this? Sometimes it's attached to an old story or an old memory or an old pain. And for leaders, there's nothing worse for a leader than to feel inadequate. So the shame of not being able to say, "I don't agree with you," as a leader is pretty big.
Yeah. I also find sometimes just being able to share a model like that helps
Yes.
people to feel sort of, it kind of creates a bit of normalcy.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like, oh, that's why I feel like that. It's
Yes.
like, and here's where we need to do those small behaviors to shift
Yes.
into a place of more power. And that's okay for you to be where you're at. But if you don't want to be there, then let's figure out a way to actually get you into these other boxes. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to say this to you because I think it's really interesting. What's that wonderful book, Atomic Habits? It's just,
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yes.
huge in the world, millions of readers. And why? Because he broke down that complexity sometimes really can change with these very small behaviors that you consistently do, and check that you're doing the behaviors that you really wanted to do, and measure, did I do what I said I was going to do? Did I did it today? But here's the other thing that's so interesting, what you just said is small behaviors. So you think, what one or two things could I have done? Not the big things. It's the small thing that you
Yeah.
could have done that lets people know, "I'm watching you. I see this. Could we bookend this now? Can we come back to this? Could we think about this and then decide what we could have done for the next time that we can do?" Small things that allow us to learn together. Because if we don't, we keep doing the same thing. And that's what creates this disengagement. And what's the new way of saying this? This quitting but stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
when that came out a few years ago, people were
Quiet
horrified.
quitting.
Yeah.
Quiet
Quiet
quitting.
quitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible. But that's when it's not safe enough to ask. That's what we get.
So we've kind of started to talk about this, I think. So anything that you'd want to add here? Our next question is around resistance, and sort of most of us think of it as a negative when we think about change, but it can actually be a sign of personal boundary or integrity. How can leaders reframe resistance as a strength and work with it rather than against it? And can you share an example of where you've seen this show up in your coaching practice with leaders?
Wonderful. Well, again, one thing that I think is a leader's job really to do, and that is to offer a compelling vision for the people he or she leads. I mean, that, is a reminder where let's all keep our oars going in the water, pulling in the same direction. It's very exciting. And in order to do that, very often, you have to be able to say no to things that are not part of that vision, or that looks good, but it's not going to get us there. So we have to drop off. No, saying no is actually very useful. And so you say to people, what do we need to say no to, as a compelling kind of behavior? But that sounds maybe hard to do. Is so you want to pull the energy for what do we want to say yes to? Because the yes energy is very mobilizing. When you really say, "What do you want?" People go, "Okay." They stand straighter. They get interested. Their eyes get bigger. If you start with, "What do you don't want?" they contract. So
Yeah.
clearly, you think, oh, that's too simple. That's true because it's simple because it's real.
Yep.
So we better go for what's real. What do people really want? What does a leader know that is going to serve the organization that they're part of, that's going to serve this team, and start really pulling for the yes behavior, and to really support people to be able to say what gets in the way and articulate that. What are the things that we have to say no for? What is going to help you, do that? And also, what gets in the way? So, for example, and I think, so when you raised the question, I was thinking of a couple of things, and they're old examples, but they're so vivid. I had once done a workshop with NASA, and I had said something like, and this was in the 90s, but it was still so hot. I said, "Oh, do you talk about the shuttle disaster?" Oh, please, I should never have asked that question. And they said, "No, please," because it was in Cleveland. They had a NASA center there, and they said, "It's the case study we keep looking at all the time." Because how was it that when the managers of the Morton Thiokol, the engineers, told us those O-rings are not going to hold in those weather, why didn't we listen to them? Why didn't we respect their no? So sometimes we need to really make a place of getting curious about the no.
Yeah.
Getting very, very curious. Or this was also a very remarkable, what are the shoulds that we need to honor, even if it's not convenient? You think it's history now, but I still think, I was in graduate school in those days, but it was an amazing thing. If you can remember the history of the Tylenol disaster when people were dying from taking
Yes.
Tylenol, it was a horrible thing. Still, it's horrible to remember that. They didn't understand what was going on, that there had been tampering. It was the first product tampering case in organizational history. And at the time, the chairman of Johnson and Johnson, James Burke, had said, we have to recall this. We have to recall every Tylenol bottle because their should was Johnson and Johnson, their vision was that we are a trusted company for your well-being. That was their vision. And therefore, it meant that even though the recall was millions and millions, and they were worried the company was going to die, honestly, it was a very bold, terrifying decision. They got the whole recall, and within, I don't know what the period of months is, they reclaimed all their market share. They
Yes.
got their trust back. And why? Because they had said no to anything stupid or dangerous. And as a customer, and still to this day, when I take Tylenol, I go, wow, I'm taking Tylenol. Because what trust is in an organization? Or recently, and I think this is more of amusing, and I'm careful about this example, but one of my clients from another part of the world, a remarkable client, brilliant guy, CEO of a bank, and he was on a podcast with me, but I still want to be careful about him. Um, in the middle of COVID, people were not paying their deposits back or their loans back, excuse me, their loans back. And one of the board members had said to him, "Well, we should do something." And this executive, this CEO said, "Well, we have to have appreciation for this terrible time in the world and vulnerability. We should honor how difficult it is." And the stakeholder, I mean, the board member said, "Are you okay?"
Oh.
Are you okay? Because it wasn't convenient
Yeah.
to, as a banking institution, to act with compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes the values that we have mean that even though we could lose some money over this, if we don't say no to this and yes to this, we are not going to be standing either for what our ethics are, our values, or what we promised. And those things today, what's going to allow us to maintain our promise? What's going to allow people to know that we are with them and we are going to shoulder the burden, even if it means we're going to feel badly. So, somebody says to someone else, "You don't understand. You're wealthy, or you're in a high position, or you're not working like this with all of my," and you say, "Yes, because right now I'm not going to get the bonus that I have, or this, I haven't made my marks because I'm going to fight for you because of where we are right now." And so I think unless we adaptively look at how resistance allows us to say no to what we need to say no to, so that we can say yes to what has meaning and vitality.
Yeah.
I love what you said and your example of the financial institution, looking at it differently. And since COVID, I don't know if it was that or if more and more institutions are getting on board, but it seems that it took a pandemic for more and more businesses to start looking at their clients as human beings again. And so I hear more and more about compassionate leadership in those kinds of institutions.
It's actually a dividing point. It's still those that aren't and those that can.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see as we go forward, because if those that having compassion, I mean, is it just an academic, warm and cozy value, or is this going to really save your company and your possibility?
Yeah. It's great. It gets people on board, that's for sure.
Yes,
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So in times of transition, leaders often feel pulled in many directions. And how can developing moment-to-moment awareness help them stay anchored in purpose and choice? And what impact do you see this having on their teams?
So such an excellent question, and probably much to say, but I will just say it like this. Awareness is the opportunity to get the data of the moment. Okay, so data could be my data, how I'm feeling, or what I notice about both of you, or what you're asking, or what's happening, or what I see happening in the world. So there's a way of thinking about this called vertical development thinking versus horizontal. So horizontal means predictable, but vertical development means that we are living in chaotic times, that nothing is linear. That you don't know exactly, based on what you did today, what's really going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this connected to presence? Because we have to turn up with our own pilot light on and say, what is happening right now that we need to pay attention to? And given what we said we were going to do, are the conditions still the same right now that we can deliver this? Either is the traffic pattern so terrible today that two of our key people aren't here, or is the flights not happening, or did the market not perform in a way that right now we can't sell what we want to sell because the value went down, or all these things. So we need to use our awareness today adaptively. We need to say, this is what I know, this is what I can share, and we all need to use the information to be able to share in a way that people know that we're paying attention and we're not without grounding going forward. So again, when we talk, why has presence become such an important thing in today's world? For us to be able to trust the person that we're working with is standing for what they say they're standing for, but also is standing for what's happening in the moment and sees in a way that we know that they're awake, that we're not going to get lost following them, that we're not going in the wrong direction. So I think that today's leader needs to be very aware for themselves. And here's the interesting thing. You can't be aware of everything, but are you grounded in what you really care about, to be aware of the vision for the people you're responsible for, what you know about the group you're leading for, so that when you make promises to them, to be aware of those promises and what gets in the way, the commitments that you have. If you didn't deliver, someone did something the other day and we couldn't hire them. And I said to the people that we were coaching, I said, if you can let them know and make an investment in their future, whatever small that is, they will always be there for you. If you do nothing, they will think that they're nothing. So even that, small gestures that say we're paying attention, we are doing what we need to do to continue to earn your trust. We know the things that we promised, and it's not that. And today's word, one of my colleagues says, we don't have to be perfect. We have to be present. What do we need to be present for, and say that we deliver, and deliver it, and then check. Did we do what we need to do? Everyone today is sending out survey instruments. You could faint. But the the truth of it is, we need to ask ourselves, did you get what you needed from us? Anything else that we could do? Drop us a line. It's not even a survey, it's a question. Did you get what you needed? What else could we have done? Let us know. And those are the kind of ways. And this is where, awareness is not some luxury. It is a thing grounded in our daily behavior. It's a checking. Listen, I call you for a minute, not a conversation. I just need to ask tiny question. Gotta go. Tiny behaviors are needed in today's complex world. And it's more doable, but I think we have to be awake. And if we're not awake, here's what we can say. I was distracted. Remind me. And I think that's the other thing. We don't have to be. So humanity now takes a little bit more. So I'm going to close with the funny thing, and that is one of my colleagues wrote a book and he said, be naked. And then in double colons, he said, but with the right people.
That's good.
So you want to make sure the people you're sharing something deep with are going to be trusted enough to know how to handle it. You just don't want to start off with a deep message to someone who you don't know what they're standing for. So waiting for the timing of a message that's important is this the right moment? Can we have 5 minutes from now? Can I tell it to you now? So we need more listening skills. We need awareness skills. We may not feel the same as all things, but we're in the boat together. So what are the questions that allow us to continue being in the boat or the car or the plane together so that we can arrive safely wherever the destination is that we said we were going to go?
Yeah, we don't have to all agree on everything. Just
be
able to.
It's not necessarily that, that would be impossible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And if we turn the boat, we're going to pick up those people that got, overboard.
Yep.
Right?
Get out the hook.
We turned the boat. A few people, we lost them, but we're going to pick them up on our way. Yeah. We're here for you. As we're helping leaders to really kind of think about what you've said and implement something around these ideas, what practical steps can leaders take to build their awareness muscle, especially in high stakes or emotionally charged environments?
Wonderful question. So first of all, when people start considering awareness as a resource, but also a competency, the thing that astounds people is that they're not aware of what they're not aware of. And so one of the things that I always will say to people, it's normal, because you literally have to start building your awareness by starting to pay attention, either to yourself or to others, and to checking. And so, doing a check with yourself, this is where really doing a check is, how am I feeling? How are my eyes feeling? My body feeling? And if we really, paying attention to ourselves, paying attention to our energy, paying attention to, did I act, and then building from there. In my day experiences, did I say everything today that I wanted to? Did I miss something? So that kind of reflection of my well-being, my decisions, my actions, that becomes a place to start paying attention. Other place to start paying attention is, did I notice what was going on with people, or did I miss it? So very often I'll say, pay attention to something that you missed, that you wonder how you missed it because someone so-and-so saw it. So starting to pay attention is by saying to people, what do you pay attention to, and what have you tracked yourself that you miss paying attention to? And I have some dimensions that I say, either how you're feeling, that's somatically, and our bodies are a form of information. So, for example, Tricia, you said the trigger moments. Sometimes you get a little flag, a red, the hairs in the back of your neck stand up, or your stomach. What's the information your body was trying to tell you? Or what's the emotions that you try to ignore that were important? Or what's the act of caring that you wish you had said? Very often I remind people that you don't have to tell the whole kumbaya thing. You have to look at someone and say, I see you. Bingo, it's enough. A word, a gesture. Or what's the information communication skills? We're animals, but we are the only ones that can say we speak. I mean, whales maybe, but or dolphins, but we speak. Did we say, what's the capacity of our communications? And, very often, the example I always like to tell is about Margaret Thatcher, the former prime minister, now gone, of Britain. when she went to become prime minister, run for prime minister, they said to her, your speech diction is terrible. Maybe you'll take speech classes. And she goes, okay, because she was speaking, hey, you, like that. And then she learned how to speak better. And didn't she do a good job? So actually, even speaking, there's an art to communication skills and your ability to scan. So that's one way. The instrument, the awareness 2020. I don't know how much development we're going to do on this for a lot of reasons, but I love that, and I think it's teachable. So very often now I've developed a little format about really assessing those variables. And here's the interesting thing. We can ask people, how do you rate me on this? How did I do? And very often I say to people, you know what? Ask the people that you trust. And because for leaders to ask just of anyone could be a little bit, little hard. How'd I do? Just even that, getting information. Or you could say to leaders, there's wonderful forums, YPO or executive coaching. You could say, maybe you want to tune up about your presence skills or your awareness skills. And leave it, that's theirs to choose. But one of the things we know when they did a session on Davos on mindfulness, so, awareness skills are really mindfulness skills. Yeah. The first time they offered those mindfulness classes at Davos, it was moderately filled. Within 3 years, you couldn't get into the session because executives now know their mind is actually so overburdened that paying attention, they're burdened. So knowing what to let go of and what to pay attention to is really the work of our times today. And so this is a perfect conversation to keep asking. And there are references. There's mindfulness references. There's coaching. There's mindfulness programs. And there's also the safest thing. Ask people, how do I do?
Brave.
And then reflect.
Yeah. That takes bravery, though.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. It's a courage thing for people to be able to step up and ask that question about themselves.
So we say to people like this, are you willing? Are you willing to do a little scary thing? Lululemon company says, do something every day that scares you.
Yes.
Okay, that's scary, but you could say to somebody, are you up for it? Would you, or do you need everyone to agree with you? And you make a joke of it, and then they decide.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. This has been so rich so far. It's like, I'm so sorry that we're at the last question now, which is the last question that we ask all of our wonderful guests, is this: looking forward, what are you really excited about? And what's next for you?
Well, it's just an honor that you even ask. Sometimes I used to think that all the people that were asked these questions were the important people, so you make me feel so important.
You are the important people.
You are important.
You should always ask that. You should always ask of
We're
anyone.
Actually thrilled that you're here. Okay.
It's a wonderful moment. I want to thank you. That was the first thing. So I wrote this book, a Gestalt Coaching Primer, which I was happy to do, and probably needs to do another version of it because I had included the competencies. Now I see ICF competencies, I can let them go, but I have this idea now of doing a manual on the resistances, and I think what we handed out, I've been toying with just doing the easy guide to how you pay attention and how you are more adaptable. And I think we all need that because the world is a pressure cooker. So I want to do that, and I think that the interesting thing is, it took me so long to arrive. I think I'm just going to plan on doing what I'm doing for the next, several years, and maybe do this manual. But also, I think that the world now needs us to step forward and deliver our message. And our message is what makes you more trustworthy to engage with, what allows you to inspire people. There's a book called The Courage Gap by, I think it's Marjorie Worrell. I think everybody, it's interesting you said courage. I think today's world needs more courage because everything is a little scary. It's easier to be watching Netflix. And that's hopeless. But that's actually what so many people are going to, because it's hard to turn on the news. It's hard to know where to start. Yes. So maybe the message is, even for now, is do something every day that you really believe in and that gives you hope for the future and courage.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. And best of luck on your adventure there around the guide. I know I'll be reading it.
I will look forward to it coming out. I think it would be so timely, no matter when it comes out. But right now, especially, I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's your encouragement is really, inspiring. I might turn to you, but I think even now, a couple of years ago, and I'll say this, that I know I have to run. The husband doesn't think I have any closure skills. But a number of years ago, I don't know what was happening in the world, there was some movement. I'm no longer really on Facebook. I'm in LinkedIn, and I'm doing a free something in June or something.
Oh.
I invite everybody to come. Yeah, because
great.
of course you have to get your message out. But a number of years ago, the message was, absent your face from your profile. And I said to somebody, I'm sorry, what am I doing? They said, you're removing your picture from your Facebook profile. I said, because we want to send a message of disapproval as a woman. I said, I'm sorry. I spent all these years learning how to speak to people, and now you want me to be silent? I'm sorry. It's the opposite. I said, I am not going to disappear and believe that's the way that a message is going to be delivered. And they said, oh. So I think actually I want to say this to all of us. Maybe that's it. We all need to stay awakened, and we all need to give our voice. And I love that you've invited me. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful.
Well, and
go ahead.
love in sign language, so you take care.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that was fabulous. We could have spent another 2 hours with
More
Dorothy.
than fabulous. I just felt like we were gifted. It was like a gift of a lifetime. I enjoyed that so much. What a wonderful conversation. I love listening to her. Dorothy's got quite a gift.
Yeah, and so much relevant wisdom, and it was just coming out like in so many different ways. I loved that even after we finished the conversation and we stopped recording, she was starting to talk to us about authenticity and how that if we're actually grounded and acting in ways that are true to our values, and we're clear about our vision, that's what propels us forward. And when we feel most confident, and that's when we are most authentic, or come across most authentic, and create trust. So it was like, even after we stopped recording, we were like writing notes like mad.
And it's so important because there are so many people who get that.
Yeah.
And there are so many of us who don't quite get it. And or to have that reminder when things start to feel a little foreign again, it's kind of like, oh, I'm not feeling the way I usually do. What's wrong? Let's check in, right? Check in.
Let's check in.
That's wonderful.
Yep, love it.
So let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many exceptional podcast episodes coming up with more fantastic guests just like Dorothy. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them. Text them, email them, and take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds to follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode. And it helps us. Why, Crystal?
So you'll never miss an episode.
To follow us, go to Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review, and share the episode with a friend. We will be so grateful. Thank you, Crystal, for bringing Dorothy to us. This was quite a gift.
Yeah, this was great.
Many thanks to you, our listeners. We so appreciate you. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Take care.
Bye.